I do see joy as a superpower because no matter what might be taken from you or me or anyone, nobody can take your joy.
Hi, welcome to the Global Joy Summit. I'm Rodney McKenzie, Vice President of Allied Development at the Fetzer Institute, and I'm delighted to be your host. In this session, I am thrilled to be here with Valerie June to explore Black joy. Valerie is a widely acclaimed and Grammy nominated singer songwriter, as well as a poet, an author, an illustrator, an actor, and a certified yoga and mindfulness meditation instructor. Her recently released first book of poems and original illustrations, Maps for the Modern World, explores cultivating community, awareness, and harmony with our surroundings as we move fearlessly towards our dreams. Following the release of her most recent album, The Moon and Stars, Prescriptions for Dreamers, Valerie is currently on tour in the United States. So we really appreciate you taking the time with us, Valerie. It's so good to be able to speak with you. I just got to tell you, Valerie, my friends are like mad jealous that I get to have this experience of talking with you today. Everyone that I've told that I get to chat with you, they've told me to let you know that they love you. So know that you are loved. You are outrageously loved in the world. And I'm sure you hear this all the time. But as a way to start, I wondered, I have experienced you starting folks off with breathing and breathing in joy. And I wonder if you'd be open to like breathing us in joy.
Wow. It is so wonderful to talk to you today, Rodney. I gratefully appreciate this time. And as I was preparing myself for this day, knowing that today was the day we're going to speak, I was like, it would be so great if we could do a meditation together as we're having the talk today. And I was like, but I'm sure that's not part of the plan. So I'll just let the day flow as it is and we'll see. But all that to say, you read my mind. Were you with me this morning on my meditation? Because I would
Yes.
love to just invite you all just to take a moment, no matter where you are in the world, in your day, to just bring your attention and your awareness to your breath and just watching it. If you're in a busy time period, maybe you're walking and listening or driving or whatever you're doing, just watching your breath and bringing your awareness to your breath. Not trying to control it, just watching it and observing and noticing each breath. And now, bringing your awareness to breathing in joy and slowly breathing out joy. You might feel a smile come across your face as you breathe in joy and slowly breathe out joy. And just take a few moments with your awareness drawn to the word joy as you breathe in and breathe out. It's okay to giggle a little bit. It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling as the world moves. And finally, just closing this moment by breathing in joy and slowly all together breathing out joy, uplifting all living beings across planet Earth and beyond with joy. It only takes a few moments to feel that, like a wink or a blink. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for that, Valerie. You know, I really wanted to start off that way because I was really moved as a Black person in this moment in the world, how breathing is such an essential and powerful thing. And I wondered if you could speak to like why you see like breathing as a critical part of Black joy.
Well, my focus on breathing as a part of Black Joy really came during the pandemic and the start of the pandemic. I had been in my own meditation and my own cycle and practice of joy for many years, decades, I would say, but really talking to others about it and seeing the importance of sharing that with others became so clear to me when coronavirus started to affect people across the planet's respiratory system. So that's your breath. And when George Floyd said, I can't breathe, both of those things relating to breath coming together in the year of 2020, which is clear vision, made it so that I realized my purpose in that year and in that time period and from now on is to remind people just to take those breaths and to breathe in joy, and that is a powerful place to be. The reason I think it's a powerful place to be is because we live in a world that is filled with suffering and so many like places of darkness. And we can focus our energy there. And I feel like there's everything trying to convince us to focus our energy there all the time, pulling us in that direction. But to me, that's not a place of our power. The place of our power is when we're focusing on our joy. And that doesn't mean that we're just optimistic and overly positive and happy. It's sad sometimes to focus on joy. And it can feel like, because we live in such a dark world and so much suffering around, it can feel like we are choosing to not focus on reality. But to me, reality has multiple layers, and the reality of what we wish to see, and the reality of dreams like Dr. King's dream, and imagination and wonder, and living in that place of magic is the only way that I see us growing and expanding and moving past all of the trials and the trauma and the darkness that we see. We have to live in that other realm, and that realm is here, it's with us. And when people, tell me, well, that's, I like to look at the world as it is. I like to look at reality and macho and tough and hard. I'm like, what could be more tough and macho than to truly allow yourself to be sensitive and feel what is happening and breathe in joy and practice joy in the face of all the suffering and the brutality that we see every day. There could be nothing
Yes,
more macho
yes.
to me. So it's a deep practice.
Mhm.
It's not easy. It is very hard, and it causes lots of tears and so much vulnerability in your lifestyle and in your day. And that's kind of why I started to share this practice with people.
Oh my gosh, I love that. It just for me it reminds me of just growing up. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, in the South. I consider Dallas the South, but just my grandmother who was came from a poor family and who went through so many trials and tribulations, but she was the most joyous person I have ever experienced. And joy was a way to really move through some of the most painful racist experiences. And I feel like it was like a radical tool that she was using, a tool of resistance. I'm just kind of curious about like how what your childhood was like and how joy and breathing, like how did you learn that, and what was your childhood experience like, and any stories that you can share about what it was like growing up for you.
Well, I have many stories. One story is that my father had one of the largest smiles that you would ever see in a room. He would light up a room with his smile. And there were so many, he was a Southern Black business owner of a small Black business in construction and demolition, but also in music business. And there were so many times where he was defeated, where he would go into a room and place a bid on building a church or a house or a school or something, and he wouldn't get it because of the color of his skin. And he would always keep that smile. He would always have positive energy and be working with that. And then there were other times where, I would go to school, and being that I'm a light skinned Black woman, I would face racism from white people, but I would also face it from my own people, saying that I was not black because I'm light skinned, so I'm a white girl. And, so I never really fit in on either side of the room. I was always in the middle of the room racially, and I'm not biracial, so it really never made sense to me. And so I would come home after being beaten up by the black girls and to the point of blood, or like after being told by all the white girls that, we don't want to associate with you because you're black. And I would talk to my mother and my grandmother about it. And their thing was always one thing. They would say, well, just kill them with kindness. And I'd be like, that's the last thing I want to do is kill them with kindness. I want to learn how to fight. But that whole attitude, I think, is a very Southern way of raising your child. And we were in the church, and it's the way of like turning the other cheek. And so I started practicing that very young, in the face of being beaten at school and going through things and seeing the world in black and white, because that's the way it was in this small town I was raised in. I decided that I was going to start seeing spirit. I was going to start seeing light beings. And that led me to some of the most beautiful people I've ever met in my life that I'm still friends with, because they see the world in terms of light beings too. And when I say light beings, I mean people who live in a place of joy, and they don't judge you based on the color of your skin, but like Dr. King said, they judge you based on the content of your character. So they check you when you need to be checked. But, they don't, have those necessarily those limits based on skin tone from the beginning. It's more about heart and living from a place of heart. And I just found myself with the tools that my mother, my grandmother, and my father would have facing racism in their everyday life. I found myself using those tools in my life and growing and expanding upon them. And, just knowing that the only way is through hearts connecting to one another. That's the only way to grow, because otherwise we create the same cycles. Because where you focus your energy, and if we're focused on, man, I didn't win this bid because of the color of my skin, or I wasn't given the raise at Walmart like Gran wasn't because of the color of my skin. I was qualified. I did everything right, but because of the color of my skin, I didn't get it. How do you wake up and keep going and treat the other person kind and joyful, and know that you've shared your life purpose and goals and dreams, and done what you needed to do when you get pushed back that way? And it happens even in music. There are artists that I've worked with, like Mavis Staples, who marched alongside Dr. King, and Booker T. Jones, who was at Stax when, Stax was, Dr. King was coming to Memphis, which is my town, I claim, to help fight against the sanitation workers, fight for their rights. And that's when he was assassinated. But that whole time, Booker and all the musicians at Stax were getting together, and it wasn't, races were mixing. That was one of the few places where black and white people in Memphis were getting together to do something. And Carla Thomas, being a person from that time and having worked with all of them in music, and they saw on the front lines everything that was happening in the 60s with the civil rights movement and all of that. They, to this day, are some of the most joyful people I've ever met in my life. So watching them and their careers and how they were able to experience all of that pushback, but still get up and sing about joy and embody joy and radiance and positivity. I have tons of role models who kind of are the story of how I got to this place. Reading things like
I
Howard
love
Thurman
that. I
and
love
and
that.
his influence on Dr. King and all of that. That to me is joy. His Meditations of the Heart book and all of that. It's embodying joy.
I really appreciate how you your perspective really allows for I think about me as us as Black people, or people who have been othered, or people who feel like, in a world where they're not seen as fully human. It allows us to take our power back, right? It allows for you to be fully powerful and to have agency by knowing that you can breathe, by knowing that you can have joy, by knowing you can move through whatever comes your way. I really, really am touched by that. It seems like, one of the things that I really appreciate too is that you really think about joy as a superpower. And it sounds like that's what I'm getting to here is like, so I'm curious about, what does joy, and in particular Black joy, mean to you, and why is it important, do you think, to hold a summit about joy?
I do see joy as a superpower because no matter what might be taken from you or me or anyone, if you know, didn't get the raise, or things didn't go the way you wish that they would have gone in your life, nobody can take your joy. When I think about Mandela or Desmond Tutu or any of our leaders that we've had, they might have gone through so much, so the whole world might have been against them, but the one thing in the jail cell that can be taken is that joy. It is of spirit. It is like no one can take it. You can only give it. And so when we take this superpower and we really, really like go within and we start to like work with it and expand it and work from the inside to shift energy, then we become alchemists. And in that time period, anything is possible. Anything is possible. We haven't even started to tap into what the possibility of positivity is for humanity, because we've been at the place of, well, we got to hold on to these resources because if we let them get them, then there won't be enough for us. But there is plenty for all. There is enough. There is more. As we expand in our minds and our mental capacity from within, then more will grow, more will become. We don't have to figure out how it's going to happen. It's going to happen because we're living in that space inside. And so, superpowers to me, they come from an inner place, and they're with us before we're born and they're with us after we leave this body. They just are. But it's our choice that we have to make to tap into them. And it's kind of like tapping into or touching a stone that's going to give you some power in a movie or something. Touching into our superpower is kind of like that. And breath is like that, because every single second of a living being's life, every moment is either a breath in or a breath out. So to me, that breath is a connection to home. You're returning to that place where the superpowers all kind of exist in this ether space. You're breathing in, returning to that space, this bodiless, this formless, and you're breathing out, returning to that space, this bodiless and formless. In between, you're in this body. You're dealing with the challenges of this life. But in every other second, you are connecting with your place's superpowers. So it's just, how do you keep them recharged? How do you keep the battery charged, And we have to do that for each other. And we do it through art, we do it through talks, we do it through books, we do it through music. It's possible to constantly surround yourself with things that are going to keep your battery refreshed and charged. But we all hit moments where we hit these
Yes.
moments that we're low. So that's the time where I'm like, okay, I need a song. I need a poem. And if nobody else wrote it, I'm about to write it right now. you know?
Yes. Well, I'm so curious. Like, one of the things that I was also thinking about, as something you talked about about vulnerability, and I'm curious, like, what is the role of vulnerability in your art, in your work, and how do you see that as connected with joy?
To live in the world that, like I said before, if you are tuned in to waking up and starting your day with the news and what's happening, and like I come from a family where CNN and Fox and all the channels, they're on all day, all day long. And that's not only my family. There are tons of families like that. And you don't have to it doesn't even have to be the news. When I'm in New York, I can walk down the street, and from this block to that block, what I see of things that are struggles or suffering cycles, and what I deal with personally in my own life, all of those things, to live in the world and to decide to make the conscious choice that you're going to choose joy, that to me is like, that's one of those places where it's like vulnerability comes in fully, because you are taking off all your armor. You're taking it all off and you're saying, yeah, this is a very, very dark planet. There is a lot of crazy stuff that is happening. But I'm choosing to live here in this heart space. I'm choosing to live here. And I know that what I see in here, I'm going to see out there one day. It's not there yet, because it takes time for things that are in here to manifest in the outer world. Time is a big thing that, being in a physical body or being on this plane, time is like, we have to wait for everything. You plant a seed, you have to wait for it to bloom. And so while we might want it fast, that's where the vulnerability is, because you're putting that seed in there and all these storms are coming at it constantly. And so you're just saying, well, yeah, I just went through a hurricane and a tornado, and it started raining fish, and like all of these things all in one block. But I'm still focused on joy. Your determination and your focus, being in that place, is nothing. It's only vulnerability. It's only that's all it is. It's like you are you are open for whatever targets that might come your way, but you're consciously there, so you're ready. You're ready. And some people call it like being in a warrior space or whatever, but I don't even like that word or that mindset. It's, to me, to me, it's just a place of peace and a place of power, superpower, and a place of like, so calling forth what we want to be, and knowing that that is where things occur first. Our minds are constantly so charged toward whatever is going on in the news and whatever is going on of darkness or sadness or trauma or bitterness, and how do we get out of that? How do we get out of it? I think the only thing we do is we observe it and allow it to just be there while we're planting these seeds in this beautiful garden over here. It doesn't go away. We just start planting these seeds and watering them, and we enjoy this garden as it grows, you know?
Yes. I love it. I mean, it's as you speak about it, I can really feel it, and it like makes me like it lights me up and excites me, which I'm really grateful for, and I'm sure people who are listening are having that same experience. And I'm curious, like, how do you think about what you're offering? This notion of joy, this notion of the superpower, this positivity, and a power in it. What's the distinction between that and what some people would call like a toxic positivity? How do you see that differently?
The way I see it differently is that there is no deluding myself into believing that the world isn't dark, and that like, it's not heavy, and it's not, that people aren't suffering and I'm not suffering, like, I think if you live in a space of joy and positivity and optimism and happiness in your life, and that is your practice, you honestly have to realize that that's dark work. It's not easy work. And whenever you don't, and it's just like, whenever you don't realize that working with light is working with dark, then to me, that's positive toxicity. You're in a toxic place then, because you're denying the darkness that's there. But all of that is necessary and for the growth, to see, to realize that that is there, and that what are our goals and what are our wishes and what are our hopes and what are our dreams, and that I can live in this space and create. I don't have to stay in that dark space. The only way we move out is to move toward joy. And it is very threatening to a lot of people for a being to live in joy. When Black folks start getting happy, really started living in joy and aren't holding on to our trauma and our past anymore, then it's threatening. Because it's kind of like, to even come at somebody and talk about positive toxicity when we know what we've been through. I don't need anybody to tell me what I've been through, as a Black person, or my heritage, or my people. I know the suffering of my ancestors. I'm not denying that. I know the suffering of my people today. And all I'm saying is that the way we move through and the way we grow and the way we process, it doesn't have to be like in bitterness. It doesn't have to be in sadness. It can be full of hope and joy, and I think it is. And sometimes I just ask myself the question of, like, is that threatening to others? Because if we tell our tale and we tell our tale of the pain, then it seems to get celebrated a lot more when we tell our tale of joy. And I struggle with that, because I'm like, I'm ready for y'all to be ready for us to shine. And when I say y'all, I mean even us. Even us, ready for ourselves to shine, because we are beautiful. And we have gifts. All cultures come to the planet with gifts that other cultures don't have. And so we need to share those things. And when we don't share those gifts, the earth gets out of balance. When we don't recognize and open our hearts to value all cultures' gifts. And so there's been so many years of our gifts not being celebrated, even by ourselves, that, there is a lot of imbalance. But we're doing it now. Now is the only time we can do it, making those things right and shifting that energy. And it's just like, let us, please, let us. Please let us.
Yes.
Let us be happy.
I'm loving that. I mean,
let us move forward.
I think I got something. Yes. I got something that I don't think I fully appreciated, was how joy can be a full understanding of history, a full understanding of what has happened and like you said, the darkness, everything that we're experiencing, and choosing to, like, be happy, or choosing to bring the light of who we are and our excitement into the world. It seems like this powerful choice is how I'm experiencing it with you, about how we choose to live. Is that accurate?
It is. It's like wielding a wand, like, versus a weapon. Because it's like saying, and now this is what we're going to create and what we're going to do and where we're going. And, and while we're trying to go that way, is, everything's against us in some ways, but we go that way anyway, because that's the way that's going to cause all of humanity to grow. And we know that. So we keep growing and we keep going, even though it's very painful for us,
Yeah. I'm so grateful for that. That is beautiful. I know one of the things that I'm really moved by, that you talk about, is, right, like, really preaching joy. It's a practice. Both the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu have also shared that sentiment. And I wonder, can you talk about what that means to you, and what are some of the practices that you find most supportive in your life?
Oh, wow. Definitely the practice of trying to be mindful in every step of my day. So when I feel the spiraling thoughts or I hear the news of something that really could set me off in the direction of like just fear, being conscious of that and shifting that energy and making that a practice through the day, and also using meditation to help me connect with that practice. Because there are days where it's like, you know I sit and I do a walking meditation, and I'm like, I'm just not really feeling connected, you know, to my breath today. But I just watch that and I'm in that practice. And that just is that day. And then the next day I'm all in. Just the idea of it being a practice, and those days when you are in the practice and you're doing a meditation cycle and you just don't feel connected, and then the next day comes along and you do feel connected. But to me, it takes all of those days. It takes the days when you are just like, oh, I'm just noticing that I'm just not feeling very connected to myself today. And I'm watching the world and I don't really know. What is going on inside, but I'm watching the breath because that's my practice. And that's what I do every day. And it doesn't it takes those days as well as the days when you do feel connected. And joy is the same way. It is the same way where it's like sometimes things occur in the world that get you so depressed and down, and in a space of I just need to cry. I just need to feel this and I need to cry. And you just embody that. You go into that space and you feel it. And the part of the practice of joy is that you don't judge yourself. You just feel what you're feeling and you ride the wave of that, knowing that still ever present is your practice of joy, and that it hadn't left you. It's with you. It's there all the time. It can only be given. It can never be like taken. So knowing that you always own it and you always have it, it's just like clouds coming into the sky. It's just like they come through, but the sky is always, it's always the sky. No matter whether it's raining coming through or sun coming through or clouds coming through, it's the sky, and joy's like that. So that being the practice of it is the thing where it's like, it's not like there are going to be only positive days or happy days. There's going to be months of, like, today I'm grieving. I'm very much grieving today. Today's a day where my best friend passed of 20 years. And that was 4 years ago. And so I woke up today, I was doing my practice and I was like, why do I feel so weird and down? And I looked at the date and I was like, oh, I'm sad. I miss my friend. And that's okay. And then I started going through all this good times in my mind and moving through all of the different times that we had over this 20-year friendship. And there were moments where I was laughing today. There were moments where I was crying, just being where you are. That's why it's a practice, because it isn't steady, always constant a certain way. It's you're working on it, practice. I don't like to use the word work though. That's why I like to use the word practice. I used to use the word work, but now, no, it's practice.
I love that. I love that. I love that so much. I love that so much. It makes me think about I had a prayer that was I am joy. That was my prayer, and I was like, how does every day for a year be a demonstration of joy? And it's powerful when you realize that joy is not about necessarily what you see out in the world, but like how you be in the world, right? The choices you are in the world can be a powerful revelation of joy internally. Um, I'm I'm really I feel like as you're speaking, I keep thinking about Toni Morrison when she said, that she is a friend of my mind. I find that you're a friend of my mind. I'm sure that you're a friend of so many of our minds, just the way that you speak and the way that just how you touch our hearts, just how your understanding and the revelation or the awareness around joy, and the way it's clear that you really lean in and live in that. I'm really curious about like how your art and your music, like how you see that all coming together with joy, and what your hope and your dream for your art is in this time that we're living in right now.
Mm. Well, I see, musically, there was a great shift with my music because I started playing instruments late in life. I was in my early 20s. And those first years and even the first records were basically like diving into tradition and learning how to really play the instruments. And a lot of it led me down the path of, you know, blues and folk and roots and understanding the basic structures and foundation of American music. And then from there, going into like rock and roll and pop and soul, and then I received the song "Astral Plane" that was dealing with light work and light practice, and it was asking, "Is there a light you have inside that you can't touch?" And when that song came, it kind of shifted everything, and also like the work that I did with Mavis and being on the phone with her when she was looking for songs, and I said, "Well, I have some." She said, "Well, Pops told me that if I was going to do some songs, ever sing a song, it's got to have a positive message." And I was like, wow, okay. Because I get a lot of dark songs as well as light songs. And so I was like going through my 100 song books, just filled with songs. And I was like, man, I only have 2 positive songs, Mavis. So I sent both of them to her, and she decided to cover one of them and named her record after it. It's "Living on the High Note" is what it's called. And that really shifted my energy to focusing on receiving positive songs or songs with a message. And being raised in the church and the gospel songs, they always had a message. They always had a story. And I love that. And that's what I love about blues and folk as well, that there was always a story and a message. It wasn't just a hook and a beat or like, only the music. There's always a message in the song. And so I started to receive the songs with Moon and Stars, and they all have a very healing message. They're all dealing with different ways of like connecting with our inner selves. Like there's a song on there, "Within You," and it's dealing with just recognizing that everything, all the light, all the darkness, both seeds, all of it is within us. And how do we share that energy? There's another song at the very end of the record that's called "Home Inside," and it says, "I know there is a place for me. Help me to grow that I may living see a stream that flows, a well no end to find, that holds the key and steals my chattering mind." That we have inside this stream that's constantly flowing, and that we hold the key to stealing the chattering mind. And when all is still, we become these powerful creators that can use our wand. And anyways, in a lot of ways, I live in a very, I try to create a space of magic and myth and a fairy tale like space for listeners to be able to fearlessly go to their own creative spot. Because if we all are living in our space of creativity and what could be an imagination, then we aren't settling for what we're being given every day. So the songs do that, and the poems, "Maps for the Modern World," the book I wrote, it does that, and the work that I'm working on now is all doing that. And so most of my work is focused in the sense of light work, and sometimes a little bit hard for people to grasp, but I just do it. And for those who really understand it in that way, they understand it in that way. And for people who understand it as just songs and poems, they understand it that way. But those messages are always there in my work. And so if you want to listen that way, it's there, you know.
I love it. I love it. Well, I think in closing, I'm curious if what you would want to offer to the little black boys and girls and children who are listening right now, who want to live out joy. What would you offer to them in this moment?
Well, in this moment, the greatest thing I would like to offer is allow yourself to dream and dream fearlessly and dream big, like dream beyond what your imagination even says. Go even further than that. Because, like, dreamers are the ones who write the story and rewrite the story and inspire others. And so I have a book that's coming out. It's a children's book, and it's coming out in November, and it's called Somebody to Love, and it's about my baby Banjalele, who had this dream that it wanted to sing, and how no one in the world believed that it could manifest that dream, but it did. And so I look at the dreamers like Dr. King, who've come before us, and how in his lifetime he didn't see a lot of his dream come true. And even now, we're still pushing to see his dream come true. But you don't dream to like only for yourself. We dream and we plant the seeds for those who are coming behind us, you know. Like, I'm living some of my father's dream now as a singer and as a musician. I'm living some of my grandmother's dreams now. I'm living some of my mother's dreams as an artist right now, because she paints and draws and stuff. And so we dream. The act of dreaming is bigger than just you dreaming a dream, because while I was a cleaning lady, I had the dream that I wanted to sing and share this art and stuff like that. But I didn't know if it was going to happen in my lifetime. I just had to start the dream. When you start the dream, you never know where it's going to lead you. It can never lead you to a dead end, because even a dead end leads you somewhere. So always following the dreams and being fearless in dreaming, and never stop dreaming, even when you get older. Keep dreaming. Dream, dream, dream.
Well, I thank you so much for your brilliance and for your joy and your creative gifts that you bring to the world. And thank you on behalf of so many of us who are inspired not only by your poetry but your music and your art. So grateful that I get to have this time with you today, Valerie.
Oh, thank you. Grateful to speak with you today. So grateful.